Greetings from an American in China. I've been here for about 10 years. I've traveled to about 100 different cities throughout the country. I've studied the language extensively, and I interact with Chinese locals on a daily basis. We generally get along very well and even see eye to eye on many different things, not in terms of political issues, but just in terms of life. Most Chinese tend to be fairly traditional in their thinking, as am I. I tell you about all this not to brag, but to simply instill confidence in you that I kinda know what I'm talking about when it comes to China-related matters. I speak from first-hand experience, not hearsay. So based on the title of this video, you may be curious about what Brendan Kavanagh, Chinese opinion, and the Great Firewall of China, as well as a random taxi driver, all have to do with one another. Before I begin, though, I do have to say that if you have the attention span of a 5-year-old, and if you can only sit through short-form TikTok-style videos, this may be hard for you to follow. I have recently made a couple of videos translating comments from mainland Chinese on the Brendan Kavanagh situation. I did this because I needed to. You see, those who live in mainland China are cut off from communicating with the outside world. How are they cut off? Well, they are cut off by what is colloquially known as the Great Firewall of China. Wikipedia describes it as the combination of legislative actions and technologies enforced by the People's Republic of China to regulate the internet domestically. Doesn't sound that bad, right? Well, let me explain in a slightly simpler way for you. What the Great Firewall of China, or Fanghua Changcheng, as it's called in Mandarin, actually does is it blocks the worldwide internet from mainland Chinese and only allows them to use what is a highly censored and manipulated domestic Chinese version of the internet. Let's see what happens when I try to view YouTube from China. Well, that didn't work. So how about Google? That doesn't work either. What about Twitter? Nope. How about Facebook? That looks like a no-go too. What you just saw was the Great Firewall of China in action. It blocks virtually any website or app from outside China that could allow Chinese to communicate conveniently with the outside world or challenge/disagree with official state narratives. If Chinese want to use Google, they just use a Chinese knockoff called Baidu instead. If they want to use YouTube, they use Bilibili or something similar instead. If they want to use Twitter, well, they just use their own domestic website called Weibo. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Since the Great Firewall is blocking interaction between China and the outside world, it's easy for misunderstandings and speculation to take hold. The long and short of it is that the Chinese are cut off from the global conversation. I should also add that most Chinese are not particularly bothered by this. It's all many of them have ever known, and they generally seem quite content to just use their domestic versions. The unfortunate part is that they don't get a voice in the global conversation. Also, a lot of times they are completely out of touch with what's happening in the world in global opinion. It's a lot easier to control a populace and the narrative when you can just cut them off from communicating with the outside world. Meanwhile, carefully controlling the flow of information. People can only see what you want them to see. They can only say what you allow them to say. There are no alternative outlets. You get to craft and create the reality that they live in. Because of this, there was a break in communication between the common people of China and the outside world. Turns out that most of China seems to feel pretty much the same way as people all around the world in regards to these arrogant, entitled brats that tried to get Brendan Kavanagh to delete his video. So what does this have to do with a random Chinese taxi driver? Well, quite a bit actually. You see, a few weeks ago, I grabbed a cab, and while sitting in the back seat, the driver and I got to chatting. He asked me where I was from. When I told him that I was from the US, he immediately said, "Oh, that's a really bad country." When I proceeded to ask him whether or not he had ever visited the US, unsurprisingly, he said that he had not, and added that he didn't want to visit because the US is too dangerous and he is too scared. This isn't the first time I've had this type of interaction in China. It's quite common, actually. I could tell that this guy was a very friendly-natured guy, so I decided to level with him a bit. Let me ask you, my friend, you, a fully grown man, say that you're too scared to visit the US. Meanwhile, I have a dear old grandmother, nearly 90 years of age, who doesn't feel an ounce of fear. She sleeps well at night and who has never faced any sort of violent interaction. She's not scared at all. Yet you seem to be terrified. Are you saying that my grandma is braver than you? My comment to him was quite pointed. I realize that. But I didn't say it aggressively. I said it in a calm, cool, and friendly manner. It took him a few seconds to respond. "But everybody in America has guns," he replied. "Do you realize that your opinion doesn't match reality?" I asked him. "America certainly has some rough areas that you'd want to stay away from. And yes, some people do have guns. But in general, the only guns you'd see if you went there would be on the hips of police officers or in a gun shop if you wanted to drop in and have a look." You see, guys, usually I avoid these kinds of conversations. It's much easier just to avoid the conversation and save my breath, save my energy. However, this taxi driver had such a friendly demeanor to him that I felt he was worth the time and energy in order to have a real, honest talk. "Well, Americans don't like Chinese and they bully them," he told me. Well, I'm American and I like you. Not only that, were we in America, and if I saw someone bullying you, I would risk bodily harm to myself in order to stand up for you. So I just want to tell you this with the hope that you'll be careful of generalizing and believing everything that you read online. Again, my words left him thinking. Shortly before we reached my destination, he said, "It's the same for Americans. They only hear bad things about China. They need to learn more about us and understand us more." I responded to him, "You're right. Not only Americans, but people from all countries need to interact and understand Chinese people more," I told him. I continued, "Here's something I have to tell you. The world would actually love to get to know you more. The result would be overwhelmingly good. But the problem is, we can't. You do realize that China's internet is blocked off from the rest of the world, and it's not blocked from our end. It's blocked from yours. And that's the saddest part. People from all around the world would love to get to know you and the people of China, but they are prevented from being able to do so." The taxi driver agreed with me on this. We then arrived at my destination. I told him that I was really glad to meet him and I enjoyed our chat. He said he felt the same way and he wished me safe travels. And my friends, viewers watching this video from around the world, you see, I've said all that just to say this. The world would love to interact and get to know the Chinese people more. But we can't. There's a big barrier called the Great Firewall of China, and it is the biggest factor leading to a lack of communication and understanding. Just like in this most recent piano incident, the world would love to chat with ordinary Chinese people about it, but they just can't. The Great Firewall, once again, stands in the way. If you have found this video of interest, please consider subscribing to the channel for future content. Also, if you would like to support my work, you can check me out on Patreon as well as Buy Me a Coffee. YouTube ad revenue is simply not enough to make it possible to do this full time. So I truly appreciate and even rely on any extra contributions you all can make. Thanks again everybody for watching this video, and we will catch you in the next one. 下次再见。